In the year 2002, a construction company owner in West Virginia won $314 million. Within 5 years, his marriage was gone, his granddaughter was dead, his daughter was dead, and he told reporters he wished he had torn up the ticket. He is not the only one. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through real jackpot winners, with real names, real dates, and real death certificates, whose lives fell apart faster than anyone could have predicted after they won the one thing that was supposed to fix everything. So here is a question for you before we go any further. If you won $30 million tomorrow, do you actually think you would be happier in 5 years? Or do you think the money would end up controlling you instead of the other way around? Drop your honest answer in the comments below. I want to know what you would actually do differently than these people did. Before we get into it, if stories like this keep you up at night thinking about human nature, hit that like button, subscribe if you are new here, and send this to someone who still buys lottery tickets every Friday. They need to see this one. Let's start with the man I mentioned at the top, because his story basically wrote the blueprint for everything that came after him. Andrew Jack Whitaker Jr. was already a millionaire before he ever bought a lottery ticket. He owned a successful construction company in Scott Depot, West Virginia, and by most accounts, he was already worth around $17 million. Then, on Christmas night in 2002, he won the Powerball jackpot, $314.9 million, the largest single winning ticket in American lottery history at that time. He took the lump sum, which came out to about $113 million after taxes. For a few weeks, Whitaker was a celebrity. He flew out on a private jet to appear on morning shows in New York City. He gave away money to churches, to strangers, to anyone who asked, and that turned out to be part of the problem. Word got around that Jack Whitaker carried enormous amounts of cash on him, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars at a time, and people started treating him like a walking bank. Within 2 years, his life had completely unraveled. He was robbed multiple times, once losing over $500,000 in cash that had been sitting in his car outside a strip club. He was arrested twice for drunk driving. He pleaded no contest to assaulting a bar manager. Several women accused him of groping them at a racetrack. And then, in December of 2004, his 17-year-old granddaughter, Brandy Bragg, went missing. Her body was found weeks later, wrapped in a tarp, under a van outside her boyfriend's house. Her cause of death was never fully confirmed publicly, though drug use was reported to have been involved. Not long after that, Whitaker's daughter also died under circumstances that were never fully explained to the public. Jack Whitaker went on record saying he believed the money had cursed his family. His wife said almost the exact same thing. And look, I don't personally believe in curses. What I believe happened to Jack Whitaker is something much simpler and honestly more disturbing, because it means it could happen to any of us. Sudden, enormous wealth doesn't just change your bank account. It changes who has access to you. Every relationship in your life gets a new financial gravity to it, and most people have zero training for how to handle that. Whitaker didn't get unlucky. He got exposed, all at once, to every predator and every desperate person within driving distance, with no system in place to protect himself. Now let's go to Florida, because this next story is one of the most disturbing in lottery history. And it did not end in an accident. It ended in a murder conviction. Abraham Shakespeare was a Florida man who never learned to read. In 2006, he won $17 million in the Florida lottery after a coworker handed him a couple of dollars to buy tickets for both of them. That coworker actually sued him afterward, claiming Shakespeare had stolen the winning ticket. Shakespeare won that lawsuit, but it was only the beginning of what people would try to take from him. Because Shakespeare could not read contracts and had no experience managing money, and because he was famously generous, giving cash to almost anyone who asked, he became a target. By 2009, most of his winnings were gone. That's when a woman named Doris Dee Moore inserted herself into his life, claiming she wanted to help him write a book and protect what was left of his fortune. Instead, prosecutors say she convinced him to sign over what remained of his money and his home. In April of 2009, Abraham Shakespeare vanished. He wasn't officially reported missing until that November. In January of 2010, his body was found buried under a slab of concrete in the backyard of a house connected to Moore. He had been shot twice in the chest. Derice Moore was convicted of first-degree murder in 2012 and sentenced to life in prison without parole. Here's my take on this one, and it's the part that really gets me. Shakespeare's story gets brought up constantly by financial advisors as the #1 reason lottery winners should be allowed to stay anonymous. Because the moment his name and his win were public, he wasn't a private citizen with new money anymore. He was a target with an address. If you ask me, this case alone should be enough to change lottery disclosure laws everywhere, not just in a couple of states. The public's curiosity about who won is not worth someone's life. Let's move to Chicago now, because this next case is genuinely one of the strangest unsolved stories connected to lottery winnings in American history. Roj Khan was an immigrant from India who came to Chicago in the 1980s and built a real, stable life. By 2012, he owned 3 dry cleaning businesses in the Rogers Park neighborhood and 5 rental condominiums. In June of that year, he won $1 million on an Illinois lottery scratch-off ticket. After taxes, his lump sum payout was set at $424,449. Khan never got to spend a dollar of it. On July 20th, 2012, the day before his check was set to be issued, he collapsed and died at his home. He was 46 years old. The medical examiner initially ruled it death by natural causes, and the case was closed. But 6 months later, at the request of a relative, authorities reopened the investigation and ran additional toxicology tests. What they found was cyanide in his system, at a lethal dose. His death was reclassified as a homicide. To this day, no one has ever been arrested or charged in Roj Khan's death. The case remains open. His winnings were eventually split between his widow and his daughter after a legal dispute within the family. This one bothers me more than almost any other case on this list, honestly, because there's no tidy ending here. No trial, no verdict, no closure for his family. Somebody poisoned a man the day before his lottery check arrived, and they got away with it completely. If you have any theories on this one, I genuinely want to hear them in the comments, because investigators never publicly named a suspect. Now let's talk about Billy Bob Harrell Jr., because his story shows that you don't need a criminal to destroy a lottery winner's life. Sometimes the winner does it to themselves, one generous decision at a time. In June of 1997, Harrell and his wife Barbara Jean won the Lotto Texas jackpot, worth $31 million, out of Houston. Harrell was working a modest job at the time, and this win felt like a miracle. He quit his job. He bought a ranch. He bought roughly 6 homes for himself and extended family members. He bought new cars for his kids. He gave enormous donations to his church, and when people in his congregation needed help, Harrell was the guy who showed up with cash in hand. But generosity without limits turns into a financial sinkhole fast, especially when word spreads that you'll say yes to almost anyone. Harrell's spending and lending spiraled completely out of control. Relatives he barely knew started asking for money. Strangers asked for money. His marriage began to crumble under the financial pressure and the constant requests. Less than 2 years after winning $31 million, Billy Bob Harrell Jr. separated from his wife, locked himself in an upstairs bedroom, and took his own life with a shotgun. Financial advisors still use his case today as a teaching example, because Harrell didn't lose his money to fraud or theft. He lost it to an inability to say no, in a culture where saying yes to family is supposed to be a virtue. If you ask me, this is the most tragic story on the entire list, because there was no villain, just a good man who couldn't set boundaries fast enough before the money and the pressure crushed him. Let's head north to Illinois for a case that shows the danger doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes, it comes from inside the family. William Bud Dampier won $20 million in the Illinois lottery back in 1996. He eventually moved to Tampa, Florida, where he opened a popcorn business called Cassie's Gourmet Popcorn. In 2005, 9 years after his win, Dampier was kidnapped by his wife's sister, Victoria Jackson, and her boyfriend, Nathaniel Jackson. Reports say Dampier had been in a relationship with Victoria and had showered her with gifts using his lottery money. The two bound his hands and forced him into a van. According to prosecutors, Nathaniel handed Victoria the gun and told her to shoot Dampier or he would shoot her instead. She fired once into the back of his head. And then there's the story of Gregory Birch out of Georgia. In November of 2015, Birch won close to $435,000 in the Georgia lottery. Word of his win spread through his community fast. Just 2 months later, armed robbers broke into his home, demanding money. And Birch was shot and killed defending his family. Let's take this one overseas for a second, because the lottery curse is not just an American phenomenon. In the United Kingdom, a young man named Michael Carroll won £9.7 million, roughly $15 million at the time, in 2002. He was only 19 years old. Within about 8 years, all of it was gone, spent on drugs, parties, demolition derby cars, and a villa in Spain that he eventually lost. British tabloids nicknamed him the Lotto Lout. He was jailed multiple times on drug and assault-related charges. By his own admission years later, he said the money ruined him faster than poverty ever could have. So why does this keep happening, over and over, across different countries, different decades, different amounts of money? Here's my honest perspective on this, and I think it's the real thread connecting every single one of these stories. Winning the lottery is often treated like the finish line. In reality, it's the starting gun for a completely different kind of race, one involving legal structures, trust issues, family dynamics, and personal discipline that almost nobody gets trained for. We spend years teaching people how to earn money. We spend basically zero time teaching people how to survive suddenly having a lot of it. Financial windfall studies have consistently shown that a large percentage of lottery winners end up worse off financially within just a few years of winning. And honestly, after researching these cases, that statistic stopped surprising me a long time ago. There's also a psychological piece nobody talks about enough. When you win big, your relationship with everyone around you changes overnight, whether you want it to or not. Family members start seeing you differently. Strangers start seeing you differently. You stop being able to tell who actually values you and who values what you now have access to. Jack Whittaker felt it. Abraham Shakespeare felt it. Billy Bob Harrell felt it. That kind of isolation, combined with sudden unearned wealth and zero preparation, is honestly a more dangerous combination than most people realize until it's too late. If there's one thing all these stories have in common, it's this. None of these people lost everything because they were foolish or naive by nature. They lost everything because nobody around them, including the lottery systems themselves in most cases, prepared them for what was coming. A ticket doesn't just buy you money. It can buy you exposure, pressure, isolation, and in the worst cases documented here, it can put a target directly on your back. So next time you buy a ticket, and I'm not telling you not to, just remember these names. Jack Whittaker, Abraham Shakespeare, Aruj Khan, Billy Bob Harrell Jr., Bud Dampier, Gregory Birch, Michael Carroll. Real people, real winnings, and real consequences that no one warned them about. If this story made you think twice, even for a second, do me a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe so you don't miss the next deep dive, and share this with someone in your life who still says winning the lottery would fix everything. Because as you just saw, for a lot of very real people, it did the exact opposite. I'll see you in the next one.